Hey, what's up YouTube? Welcome to another video by Ratchets and Wrenches, and today I'm going to show how you can remove and replace a power steering pump on this 2001 Audi A4 with the 1.8 liter engine. Now, although I'm going to be showing you how to remove and replace it on this car, but once you watch this video, you'll get a very good idea on how to go about it, since most power steering pumps work the same, and they're all belt driven, they're all mounted to the engine one way or another. And by the end of this video, you'll get a very good idea, and you can probably remove and replace it on any car. Okay, so on this 2001 Audi A4 with the 1.8 liter, there's where your power steering pump is located. That guy right there, and there's the belt that runs to your harmonic balancer, and and here's the tensioner that puts tension on it. Now, I haven't looked at the repair manual, but I'm sure you would probably want to put this front clip into the service position to get access to it. But I'm going to try to do this without touching this. We're just gonna try to get in there, and actually I've already started. I removed this upper timing belt cover that goes here. It's just held in with a couple of clips. Make sure you get this coolant line and this vacuum line out of there first before you go to remove it and yanking on it. Okay, next what you need to do in this case on this car is to get a wrench on this part of the tensioner, and then we're gonna turn that clockwise, and that's gonna release tension on this belt, and we're gonna slide it off of our power steering pump. Okay, now I'm going to be using this adjustable locking wrench for this, but if you don't have one of these, you want to make sure you use the correct size wrench for this, because it's going to be even harder when you go to put this back on, put the belt back on. Okay, so now we lock this in place and turn it clockwise. Now we should be able to reach down there and get the belt off the power steering pump. There we go. Now we just slide it out of the way. Okay, now I should go without saying, just make sure you know the routing of your drive belt for your alternator before you take it off. Okay, sometimes it's on a sticker around your engine bay, but if, like on this case, we don't have it, so make sure you know how it's routed. Okay, to get easier access to the mounting bolts that are holding our power steering pump in, we're gonna remove this tube that goes to your intake manifold, and this is held in by these two clamps, one here and one on this side. That guy right there. Now we just twist and pull on these, and this should come loose without much of a fight. Same thing here. Twist and pull, and it's out. Okay, and here's a good look at our power steering pump. As you can see, it's attached to the engine through this bracket, and this is your pressure line, and there's your supply line. So what we're going to do next is to remove the supply line and drain all the power steering fluid out. Okay, what we're going to need to do next is to get this clamp off. This is the original factory clamp, and these are one-time use clamps for the most part. And what you can do is either stick a screwdriver in them and loosen them, or if you have these cutters like I do, you can just cut them. Okay, now I couldn't get a perfect grip on this to cut it, but I've loosened it enough so that we can remove this hose. Then afterwards I'll remove that clamp. Okay, there we go. Okay, next we get a 22mm socket, and we're going to remove this bolt that's holding our high pressure line in. Okay, and sometimes, like in this case, this bolt is stuck to this pressure line, and it moves with the pressure line when you try to remove it. So what you're going to have to do is figure out a way of keeping the pressure line in place while we're twisting the bolt off, which is, in our case, I'm going to try to use this screwdriver as an anchor to keep it from moving, and then twist off this bolt. There we go. And there's going to be two washers when you take this bolt off. There's going to be one washer right here on top of this power steering line, and then another one on the bottom. You're going to make sure you don't lose either one of those, because if you don't put it back on without those washers, you're going to have a leak and have to do this all over again. Okay? So here's our bolt with this washer, and here's the second washer I was telling you about, but it's stuck. As of right now, it's stuck to the power steering pump, and we'll remove it once we get the power steering pump out of the car. Okay, next we're going to remove these mounting bolts. You can use our ratcheting wrench on these, and these are 13mm bolts. Once these are loosened, you can just get a socket on them through the power steering pump pulley, and just twist them out by hand. Okay, there's another one on this side that we'll have to get from the bottom. I'll try to get a shot at it if I can. Well, this one's going to be easy. You can probably just get it out by hand. You are going to have to line up your power steering pump pulley so there is room when you go to unscrew these so they can be taken out through your power steering pump pulley. Okay. Here's one. Reach in through the power steering pump pulley and just use your hand to take them out the rest of the way. Something else to be kept in mind is that you don't necessarily have to remove them all the way. They just need to get out of the steering pump part, which is, you know, it just goes into the steering pump this much. So as long as you screw it out that much, you should be able to remove the pump. So now we're going to go to the one on the bottom. Okay, and here's the bolt that's on the bottom. Okay, this one was pretty easy to get out also. Okay, last but not least, we're going to remove this bolt in the back, and this one is going to require a 6mm Hicks bit socket. There we go. Okay, now we should be able to wiggle our power steering pump out of here. There we go. Okay, here's a look at our power steering pump out of the car. Now, what we're going to do next is to remove this pulley. Now, on this car, this pulley is attached to the pump by these 3 bolts. On a lot of cars, though, you're going to have to get a power steering pump pulley remover and installer. You can rent it for free at your local auto parts store. Basically, it's usually a 2-jaw puller, and it attaches to this pulley, and you just screw it in, and it pulls the pulley, removes the pulley, and the installation is pretty much the reversal removal. It comes with adapters that you run them down, and it reattaches the pulley back onto the power steering pump. But on this car, we're going to have to remove these bolts. These are 6mm bolts, hex bit bolts, and the only problem is they have some corrosion on them, and this socket is not going in all the way. So what we're going to do actually next is to spray them with some brake clean to clean the inside of these bolts up. Okay, if it's still not going in all the way, we're gonna have to just tap it, man. Now I'm gonna be using an air gun to remove these bolts. If you don't have an air gun though, you want to get this power steering pump in a vise, get a screwdriver in here to keep this pulley from moving, and then get these bolts out, okay? Now let's see if we can take this pulley off. Some freeze off will probably help. There we go, free and clear. Now you take these to your local auto parts store and then get a new one and make sure it matches this like this exactly, okay? Okay, so just got back from the store and here's our new power steering pump. As you can see, it's an exact match, which is great, but now we're just gonna put it back on the car. We're gonna put it on the car a little differently than the way we took it off. We're going to put the power steering pump on first, then put on our pulley. This way we have more access to these mounting bolts, okay? Okay, here we go. We're just going to start these bolts, and I'm going to start the one in the rear first, just so it holds this power steering pump in place while we line up all the other bolt holes and run those down with our hands, okay? Okay, now just slide this in. And the last one that's on the bottom. Now we just tighten him down or torque him down. If you want to be on the safe side, I'm just going to go with experience as to how much I think these need to be tightened. Okay? Okay, next it's time to put in our pulley. And just a dab of blue thread locker on these little bolts is probably a good idea. Okay? Just going to move this to the side. Line these bolts up, and hopefully it's gonna be a really tight fit, but should be able to get these in, hopefully. But once you get one started, one of the bolts started like we're getting now, the rest should be a lot easier, okay? And again, run it down, but don't tighten it. So if you need to make any adjustments to the pulley and the bolt holes to line them up, you can do it, okay? Now we'll just move this over and go to the next bolt. Okay, in order to tighten down the pulley bolts, you're gonna need an Allen key, and this Allen key needs to be short on this side because there's not a whole lot of space in front of it. And what I did was I just cut this end with my angle grinder, and now I'm just gonna tighten those bolts. Again, you can use a screwdriver to keep the pulley in place while you're tightening these bolts, and these bolts don't require a lot of torque. Okay, next we get our new clamp on the supply line and slide it in. Next we'll tighten our clamp. Okay, next we'll tighten our pressure line, making sure using new washers. Okay, next we add the proper power steering fluid, and then we check for leaks, making sure nothing is leaking. Next we get this air tube to our intake manifold back on, and then we tighten down both clamps at both ends. Okay, next we put our belt back on, which is gonna be a little tough, but doable. Okay, what I'm gonna do next is to put that upper timing belt back on, and then we're gonna get air out of the system. Okay, next it's time to bleed the system of any air, and according to Audi, we need to jack up the front of the car, and with the engine off, turn the wheel to the right, all the way to the right, and then all the way to the left 10 times. Then you start the engine, and then you repeat that step, and then by then most of the air should be out, and then the remaining air is gonna be bled out once you drive for about 10 to 20 miles. You know, every manufacturer has a slight variation of this, you know, but most of them recommend raising the front of the vehicle and then turning the steering wheel first when the engine is off, and then turning it on, and then getting the rest of the air out. But I already put the car on the ground, and I don't feel like putting it, you know, jacking it up again. So we're just gonna do this with the engine off, okay? Okay, same thing with the engine on now. And you want to do this slowly, okay? We got power steering, but it's not as smooth as it should be because it has a, you know, that little bit of air still in the system. But you do this 10 to 20 times, and it'll be really smooth after a while, after that. And you want to keep in mind that you want to take a break after turning this a couple of turns and check your power steering fluid reservoir. Make sure it's not running low, okay? Okay, so after about 5 minutes of turning left and right, and we got a pretty smooth steering wheel now. And you know, the minor amount of air that's in the system is going to be bled out once you start driving it. After about 10 to 20 miles, we should be all set, okay?